The Employee Provident Fund Organization, or the EPFO, has handed a sharp cut to the enrollment data it had released earlier. The EPFO had claimed that nearly 40 lakh people had enrolled with the organization from September last year to March this year. The Prime Minister recently cited the EPFO data to claim robust job creation in the economy. But now, the EPFO has revised this data lower, from nearly 40 lakh enrollments to just under 35 lakh enrollments. This is a reduction of over 12%. In January this year, a report by SBI and IIM Professor Pulok Ghosh wrote a report based on this data claiming that nearly 6 million jobs were added to the economy. Opposition parties like the Congress and several other independent economists had questioned the report and the reliability of using the EPFO data as an employment indicator. Now, the sharp revision in the data by the EPFO leaves us with a few questions. Is the EPFO data a reliable proxy for job creation? And what is the reason for the sharp volatility that we've seen in the EPFO enrollments? Joining us now, Praveen Chakravarti, Chairman of the Data Analytics Department at the Congress, and also with us, Soumyakanti Ghosh of State Bank of India, one of the authors of that report that was published earlier. Soumya, let me start by asking you, the fact that this was questioned, whether to use the EPFO data as an employment indicator, is a debate that I'll get to in just a bit. But let me start by asking you about what you make of the kind of variation that the numbers are throwing up. September initial versus the latest numbers, a difference of 6.2%. October, difference of 11.8%. December, a difference of 13.3%. March, a difference of 21.6%. How do you explain this? Because you've also pointed out that duplication is no longer an issue when it comes to the EPFO data because of the Aadhaar linkage.
No, yes, I think any data revisions is a continuous phenomenon. So I think we should not get bogged down by these data revisions. The entire, even the USA gives out data which is revised. The CSO data is also revised. And I think the possible reasons for data revision is that since this is the net data, basically people who are coming in and going out and the difference is taken. So what is possible is that people who are joining, that data is being reported by the organization immediately, and people who are leaving, that data may be delayed by maybe a couple of months. So that's why you see that the revision for the March is the steepest, because possibly what happens that in April, most of the people who may have left their job in the fiscal year ending March and taken up a new job in the month of April. So therefore, I think that's why you will also see that the April data which has been released, that April data actually also shows a sharp jump from the March data, which has now been revised downwards. So I think the data, over a point of time, the data should stabilize. And once these problems are identified, that these data revisions which are being sent out by the organization needs to be done faster, I think over a point of time, this data should stabilize so that it can give us a good time series for any comparison which can be made over a comparable period last year.
Okay, so you're saying that one of the explanations for the sharp variation that we are seeing in the initial numbers as well as the latest numbers is the possibility of the lag effect of people actually leaving. But then, as you yourself pointed out, Soumya, that you need to wait for the data to show some degrees of stability. It's all over the place, as it seems, at this point in time. Is it then fair for you to have made the kind of extrapolations that you made, which the government has touted as being an indicator of the kind of jobs that have been added? The finance minister in his budget speech quoted your report saying that 70 lakh formal jobs will be created this year basis this data.
Now, I'll tell you, I think exactly whatever projections we have made, I'll just give you some numbers. I think as for the numbers which you said it, from September to March, the number was, I think, around 39 lakhs. Now it has been revised to 34 lakhs. Now, the interesting thing in the EPFO data is that there is a lot of debate and critique in the EPFO data that these are not new jobs. Some of this is because of formalization. Yes, of course, some of this is because of formalization. But if you very closely look into the EPFO data, there is now a new column which gives out the extent of formalization. Basically, those jobs which are already in the system. And a rough calculation shows that out of 34 lakhs, around 18% of the jobs are actually were existing in the system before, so these are actually not new jobs. So if you net out that 18% out of 34 lakhs revised job, the number comes to around 28 to 29 lakhs. So that is for 6 months. So now if you extrapolate that number is very close to 55 lakhs, which we were quoted in an earlier study. So therefore, I think the variations in the numbers, notwithstanding the variation in the numbers, and this data, if you look into the data, this data is actually even richer than what the US payroll is giving, because this is giving the state-wise data, the industry-wise data, even though the industry classification may not be as good as the researcher would want. But I think once this data is given out, this formalization index, now it's showing 18%, it could be higher. I think it could be taken as an indicator of which sector is actually adding new payrolls, and therefore the training, the skilling needs of the India has to be tailored to for that particular sector.
Okay, so you're standing by the report despite the kind of variation that we've seen now with the EPFO data that's been released by the MOSPI.
Of course, because I think there could be some variations in the numbers, but if I have to look into the numbers from what the EPFO, the data has published, the formalization rate, the 18% formalization rate, the data revisions, and I will see that when this month's data comes out, possibly July, in the last week of July, you will see that the April number will actually be much higher than the March number, if I go back the seasonality trend, which I just said to you. So from that point of view, I think the EPFO numbers should give out a robust idea of payroll creation. We can always debate and critique whether it is reliable or not, but I think at the end of the day, India has no payroll data. So this data should be given out so as to give an idea to the policy makers to make to make policies. Otherwise, it's very difficult for any researcher or policy makers to gauge out what direction the economy is moving, what is the amount of job creation or payroll creation, and what has to be done so that we can skill our labor force.
Okay, Praveen Chakravarti, let me come to you now, because I think this debate was yes. Go make your final point, Soumya, and then I'll get Praveen in.
No, I think fine. So the limited point which I wanted to mention is that the data is basically will evolve over a point of time. There is a formalization data, maybe more data should be given out over EPF over a point of time. But I think as of now, we should take the data and analyze it as the trend picks up over the next couple of months.
Okay, let me bring in Praveen Chakravarti. Now, Praveen, this debate has been raging since January, and a lot of people like you, Jairam Ramesh, Mahesh Vyas, etc., have argued that while the EPFO data can be a gauge, an indicator of the state of the economy, of the health of the economy, it cannot be an indicator of employment. In light of what we've seen now with the downward revisions coming in, A, how do you explain that? And B, what does this then tell you about the claims on job creation?
See, we need to take a step back, and really this whole jobs and formal jobs claim starting from the Prime Minister is just laughable based on EPFO data. I think let's not conflate things. No one is saying that the release of new EPFO data is a bad thing. It's actually a very good thing. We welcome this data. What we question, and I questioned right immediately, days after the grand claims were made that India creates 6 to 7 million formal jobs a year based on this data. And all we said at that time was, hello, please be cautious. Be cautious. The data is not stable. The data is too new. We do not know the methodology behind the data, and the data is for too short a time period. This is what we said back in January. Nobody is questioning the release of EPFO data. It's a good thing. We welcome it. I've said that again. The whole jobs narrative around hiding behind such spurious high-frequency EPFO data to claim that we are the fastest job creator in the world, which is what it will be if you go by these numbers, it is absolutely laughable. And remember, we're talking about jobs in this country. Jobs is about livelihoods. It's no surprise that jobs ranks as the #1 issue in every single survey after survey conducted by all independent organizations. Mood of the Nation, This of the Nation, everyone says jobs is the #1 issue. If we were really the world's fastest job creator, why should jobs be an issue, such an issue, for so long? So I think this whole thing has just been turned into a comic saga. And now I hear words like, oh, we have to wait, the data has to be reliable, and possibly this is, I mean, look at the volatility of the data. Look at the monthly volatility. I know we've talked about revision of changes. The monthly change in EPFO numbers, minus 40%, plus 78%, minus 20%, plus 17%. Such volatility in numbers, let's look at the data more carefully. More data is absolutely welcome. We understand that the EPFO data can be a big, important economic indicator to watch for, but let's not jump the gun. I understand that the Prime Minister and his colleagues want to score points hiding behind this data to claim jobs being created. That is not true. That is simply not true. So let us wait for the data to stabilize, which is apparently what the authors of that very report are now saying. Let us wait for the data to stabilize, which is what we said way back in January.
Okay, you know, while we argue about the issue about stability as far as the data is concerned, I want to ask you, Praveen, as to what your explanation is for the kind of volatility that we're seeing. Do you believe that it is the lag effect that Soumya was talking about? How do you explain, or what would you attribute this kind of volatility that the data seems to be showing up?
See, this is conjecture. It's conjecture to say people reported late and reported early. See, the thing is, we don't have a long enough time series. If you go back to the first ever piece I wrote, that's what I asked for. I said, please give a long enough time series for us to observe certain trends. Is volatility the standard, is the norm? So the answer is, we don't know why this change is. We don't know why there is such dramatic volatility in the data. And let's not conjecture again. Let's not say because people reported late. What are we saying? Because I remember very clearly when the data came out, the explanation, the justification was this is Aadhaar deduplicated, and these were net new EPFO additions. I remember the word net new EPFO additions. Now suddenly there is this excuse of somebody reporting late. So let us all acknowledge, I understand, you know, we all deal with data, we understand large data sets. Let us understand that the data is not stable enough. I don't want to conjecture and give you an explanation of why it is down 5 lakhs. Who knows, tomorrow it could be up 7 lakhs. If I look at the April number, it's already apparently we have created 7 lakh new jobs in April. So it's just too volatile. This is not a reliable data set to make grand claims, let alone make policy decisions based on this. God forbid, we've already had the radical economic policy decisions such as demonetization, completely irrational. Let's not make job and labor related policy decisions based on EPFO data.
Okay, Soumya, I'll give you the final say. Given the fact that you yourself have acknowledged that the data needs to stabilize, we need more time to be able to evaluate the kind of volatility that we're seeing. Would it not be prudent then to not extrapolate this data and not to use Praveen Chakravarty's words, conjecture on the basis of the EPFO data that we are now left with?
No, let me see. I don't want to get into this political slugfest which has been happening since the data was released. I think all these points which are being made are completely laughable and irresponsible. So I don't want to get into all these debates. The only point which I have been saying, there has been not a single point which has been raised regarding the EPFO data being not an indicator of the payroll creation. Everybody has been saying all sorts of other things. So I don't want to get into those discussions. My only limited point is that let us give this data a chance, and even the data is being revised, we need to look into the larger picture. So instead of saying that it's a laughable song, we should not do any policy conclusion. I think leaving that aside, leaving that politics aside, I think this is a data which gives out data in the age band, this gives out the extent of formalization, this gives out the industry-wise data, and an economy which is growing at more than 7%. It is very foolhardy to believe that it is creating maybe 100 or 200 jobs a day, which has been claimed. This is my limited contention. I don't want to get into the politics of it.
Okay.
No, this is not politics.
Fair enough.
This is economics and data. This is not politics. This is not politics. This is economics and data. Anyone that understands data would acknowledge that based on just this data set, nobody can make claims that India creates 7 million jobs a year.
All right, gentlemen, unfortunately, we're out of time.
Thank you.
Okay, Shaumyakanti Ghosh and Praveen Chakravarti, appreciate you joining us here on CNBC TV 18 to decode the latest EPFO data, which shows a sharp variation from the initial numbers and the numbers that now have been revised downwards. Appreciate your time here on CNBC TV 18.